A man would go in and he would buy the sex that he wanted. He was given a certain color poker chip. One young lady turned in 72 poker chips in a 24-hour period.
Yeah, human trafficking to me almost sounds as if it's a packaging phrase. It's entirely too sterile for what's really happening, because what we're really talking about is nothing short of slavery.
These girls are enslaved. They are, for all intents and purposes, no longer free to do anything except what the trafficker tells them to do.
Pictures and movies of 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds being orally and anally raped, that does something to you.
Their primary goal is to sell another human being, control another human being for the purpose of selling them as sex slaves and for profit. I would have never guessed that it would be in Iowa. If I was not in the position I'm in now, I wouldn't believe that it existed.
The traffickers get to operate almost uninhibited because they know we're not looking for it.
In the heart of America, an area known for its family values, faith, and love of farming, flows a dark undercurrent. Even in the heart of America, where faith and family values are honored, there are many predators prepared to buy children forced into sex slavery. Law enforcement, survivors, and members of the nonprofits all agree for there to be change, we must become more aware, looking for the children who are being trafficked right in front of us.
When I took this position and I saw some of the exploitation of children on the internet, pictures and movies of 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds being orally and anally raped, that does something to you. If we have, and we have here in the District of Kansas, we have in the past couple of years, we have prosecuted men who in their homes have recorded themselves having sex with underage folks, children. If we have cases where we have prosecuted men who've taken photographs and then shared those. That's production, just as any kind of slick, X-rated company might make. That is production of pornography. When I tell people that we see things like that, they almost, it's so horrific, they almost are in a state of disbelief. But it is something that is out there. It's tragically and sadly growing exponentially on the internet.
According to investigators, another gateway into prostitution is a strip club. They tell us too many times the dancers are underage and being groomed for prostitution.
You know, at 15, sold to an owner of some strip clubs. We need to understand, we as Americans, as people, see that that's somebody of the legalized sex industry. Legalized. That's what we say is acceptable. And that is something in the legalized sex industry, that is what happened to me, and it happens to others.
Years of abuse and neglect robbed them of their childhoods. At 15, Christine McDonald ran away from home, hoping to make it on her own. That decision led to years of imprisonment, rape, humiliation, and other abuses. At first, she found an abandoned house with no water or power in the dead of winter.
This time a man pulled up beside me and asked me if I needed a lift. Yeah, I'm just heading right up here. I'm looking for work. And I introduced myself. I gave him a fake name. He's like, well, how old are you? I gave him a fake age, of course. He says, well, sweetie, you're in luck. I was like, what? And he's like, I'm actually looking to hire somebody. I have a business, and I'm actually, looking to hire a couple people. What I realized now was I was being groomed. What happened, this man still at no given point was ever made any kind of sexual advances. He was my friend. I trusted this man. We went to lunch. One day he said, get up, get dressed, we're going to lunch. I was like, whew, sounds great, And we went, and he introduced me to a gentleman as his brother, which I probably wasn't. And he said, well, you're going to be living with him now. And for $2,500, he sold me to this gentleman. And I went home with him, and then I realized something was way wrong. He forced me to have sex with him. He told me when to sleep. He told me when I could eat, or if I could eat, because lack of cooperation meant no food. And then he brought me some clothes and said, "You're going to work." And that's when I went to work at a strip club for him. I had a bouncer that was with me at all times. I wasn't even allowed to walk across the parking lot by myself. Sometimes I'd work for 16 hours on stage. I still had all the drugs I could possibly want. I was supposed to be nice, and sometimes I would be told which ones to be really nice to. And if I wasn't, then when we got home, there was violence. Sometimes I would be locked in my room and not allowed to leave. Sometimes I would be kept awake and unable to sleep and then have to turn around and go to work for 16 hours again. Sometimes there would be men waiting, and I would be told what I was supposed to do. I didn't leave. Where was I going to go? And I was never given an opportunity to leave. I was never left alone. I was never left unescorted, and I was never allowed to talk to anybody. For years and years and years, I prayed literally on my knees at the corner of Independence Avenue and Spruce. There's a church there, and I would get on my knees and pray. If there is something called God, let this next car I get in be the one that ends my life. I prayed for that. I thought it was my only out. And day after day, week after week, year after year, death never found me. My friends' bodies would turn up dead in the Missouri River. My friend Marie, the only thing, I was at a house and her tattoo was on the news. She had been picked up and beaten, her fingertips burned off. She was mutilated and tossed in the river, and the only thing they could find to try to identify her was a tattoo. She had been shot in the face, so they couldn't use her teeth, her dental. And I decided that I wasn't even worth death. Now, I want to say that when you're at a point as a human being that you're at such a low point, praying for death is one thing, but internalizing that you're not even worthy of death, that's a dark place to be.
Well, the fact of the matter is, it's the second most profitable criminal enterprise in the world. It generates annually $39 billion. That's second only to the drug trade. It surpassed weapons trade about 10 years ago. Let's start with the basic math. In most cases, a trafficker can make about $1,000 a night per girl, and say that they work 300 days a year. That one girl has generated $300,000 in cash for that person.
Because human trafficking victims, human trafficking suspects look like me and you. That's what makes the suspects so dangerous, because they don't stand out, they blend in with the crowd. And that's what allows them to pull in these victims, is by being just one of the crowd.
I actually ended up in Kansas City after I ended up here. I was in Oklahoma as a runaway. That was where I started. I actually was offered a ride by a guy that was, I was walking the streets, and a guy pulled up beside me and said, "You need a lift?" I was like, "Sure." I was on my way to a store to get food. I said, "Well, do you pass any big cities between here and there?" I just needed to get away from just the ugliness that I was entrapped in. What I didn't realize is it didn't matter where I went, I was so broken. I believe we were given the honor because God knew the end of the story, that we would share the stories, that we would let people know what this really looks like, that we could be the voice for those that died at the hands of purchasers of sex. I prayed for death for so long, and I truly believed if there was a merciful God, death was my blessing. And I'm so happy that that didn't happen for me. I've been, I have scars all over my body. They'll never go away. I have invisible scars I'll carry for a lifetime.
The average age of entry nationwide for trafficking is between 11 and 14 years old, but those fighting the epidemic say they have seen some much younger.
The unfortunate aspect of that is we have these adults who may have just now been discovered as being prostituted, and they were prostituted as minor children. They were extracted from the community when they were 12, 13, 14 years old. They've never been to school. They have no skills. They have no education. And we extract them. We ask them to be our witnesses in court. We identify them as victims. We ask them to be witnesses, but then we don't offer them any kind of an integration program back into society. It's very frustrating to me because having been in the criminal justice system for a number of years, our Bureau of Prisons, our state institutions, when a defendant is charged and sentenced to any number of years, prior to his or her release from an institution, they are offered programs that help them with substance abuse, to help them with mental issues. They also give them programs to integrate them. The last few months or years before they're released from custody, they are allowed and they are given programs that integrate them back into society so that they can thrive once that they're released. And I think that we need to step up to the plate and we need to provide them programs that are available to integrate them back into society, offer them GED programs, or perhaps maybe some of those kids would enjoy being able to go back to school and have some sort of a social life that has been robbed from them.
So that when we have that opportunity to free someone from slavery, then the next question is, well, what do we do with that person? That person typically needs housing. They need medical attention, they need often psychological attention, they need clothing, they need the bare necessities just to get back on their feet. Once our job as prosecutors, we're finished prosecuting someone, our role typically stops. But the difference in this kind of prosecution is we try to be problem solvers. We try to say, okay, we have this person who's been victimized. Are we just going to say, we sent the bad guy away, have a nice day, or what are we going to do to help them? And that's a real challenge, I think, for both federal agencies and state agencies alike.
Women, they too are a child of God's, and that's what we as a community have to help support and not look at these women as second-class citizens.
You have to look at the poverty of a region or an area. You have to look at the drug use. So you look at Oklahoma, we have high use of meth. That's a problem that contributes to this. You have high rates of divorce. We have more women incarcerated per capita than any state in the country.
They're the deacons in your church, the teacher in your child's school, and the clerk at your child's favorite store. They are anywhere they can gain access to your child.
It's not just a law enforcement effort. It's not just a Department of Human Services. It's not just a medical. It's not all those singly, but it's all together, and that's how we're going to be successful.
There is no circle that it doesn't run in. It runs in the expected circles, certainly, with the massage parlors and strip clubs and those kinds of things. But with the advent of the internet, it is now what you would call the legitimate places, the hotels, the motels, private residences, truck stops, other places, because the business is being conducted online.
Christine McDonald may now be physically blind, but she still sees a bright future. She's written a book. Cry Purple details her life in slavery. She hopes it will bring others hope.
You know, my street name was Ellie Mae. You know, out here, I have a friend that was murdered when I was out here on the corner one day. A guy pulled up beside me, you know, because this is a pretty popular place. It's real easy for the girls to come up here to the corner. Guys can see her. They can walk down the street down here. The guys kind of turn the corner. They wait. They slow down here, flash their lights, and they make the corner. So they're kind of off in the cut, out of the view. And the girl walks down and gets in the car. I've done that hundreds, if not thousands of times. I have a little boy named Ricky who, when I lost my eyesight, they told me, we got this medicine that's going to make all this inflammation go out of your brain, and we'll be able to get you seeing again, and it'll kill your unborn child. And I chose my child's life.
Some would say she once was blind, but now she truly sees.
When I exited, trust was very difficult for me because of the horrendous things I had experienced. I didn't trust anybody. I say God's got a sense of humor because now I'm blind, totally blind, and I have to rely on strangers to get me to the potty. I believe things are allowed to happen to us sometimes to get us where we're supposed to be so we can fulfill our purpose on this earth. You know, I wouldn't have understood faith if I wouldn't have lost my sight. Perhaps the reason we survived, perhaps the reason we were restored, perhaps the reason was so we could tell the stories.